What's up guys, KPlaysHere. Since it's been about a day and a half since we got the second trailer for Monster Hunter Wilds, there's been roughly already about several hundred to several 100,000 trailer reaction videos out there. Now obviously I'm jumping right into the mix too here, but instead of the usual frame by frame analysis, I'm going to go to a bit of a different approach. We've probably all seen the full trailer dozens of times by now, so this will just be me sharing a few impressions I got after watching a few specific parts and taking time to digest all the new information. The first thing that caught my attention is all the 4th gen Easter eggs sprinkled in here and there. The sand ship we open in the trailer with is the callback to the ships used to chase down Morans and divert their paths away from desert towns back in 4th generation. I'm not really the biggest fan of water combat, so these kind of fights are nice to have as a chance to feel like we're battling giant sea beasts while still keeping our feet on solid ground. We already do have 2 different flavors of giant sand whale though, so unless they bring back one of them, it'd be cool to see some sort of maybe sea serpent or kraken this time around. The callbacks that are stirring up a lot more theories though are the resemblances between some of the old and new characters. The Guildmaster sending us on our mission, for example, could easily be the Ace Lancer after a time skip, which will continue the recent push to give the series a bigger timeline and plot progression. I've also seen a lot of people speculate that Nada could be the Ace Gunner's son. These could all be wild fan theories, but considering the fact that we've already seen the Ace Cadet make a return at the end of Iceborne, I don't think they're too far off. Rounding out this love letter for you though is the person drumming up the most conversation, Gemma. For some reason, people really wanted Manale to be the grown-up Little Miss Forge. But honestly, aside from a few similarities in the outfit, I never really saw the comparison. Gemma, on the other hand, there's definitely a lot more that matches up there. And when you add in the Carabineer's jacket and a Cutku plushie in the same style as the Guildmarm's frog, she's practically screaming "For You" reference. Personally, I'd love it if the gameplay and story ended up working off of some 4th gen vibes, because that was the first Monster Hunter game I really started playing seriously. And it brought us some awesome plots and monster designs too. Speaking of monsters, Chadakabra and Doshiguma are already making a strong start in my book for Wild's roster, and we're already going to see another reveal next Friday. I'm hoping that we get a varied roster of monsters this time around like we had in 4th gen. We got giant bugs, frogs, arctic land sharks, snakes, woolly mammoths. I mean, don't get me wrong, make it interesting enough and I'll still enjoy a good old classic Monster Hunter Wyvern fight. But going up against a wider array of different creatures really makes it feel like you're in a living, breathing ecosystem. Can't wait to dive into it and make it a little less living and breathing, one fancy new hunting ornament and armor set at a time. If there's one small wish I can make in this area though, is that if we get a bunch of cool new designs, they don't end up mostly bunched into the early chunk of the game's progression. I get that the developers usually do this to make sure that the majority of players see the new stuff before some of the less interested ones drop off of the game for one reason or another. But it would definitely be nice to fight more of the newer faces in Endgame mixed in with the usual returning ones like Deviljho, Rajang, and the old Elder Dragons. On that note, we'll wrap up my thoughts with a few things shared about the combat in Wilds. One of these has me really happy, while the other worries me a bit. Focus mode will be our next new combat gimmick, I'm assuming, and it seems like it'll be useful for a bunch of different things. From the sounds of it, while the slinger is back and the clutch claw has been removed, the tenderizing mechanic will now be implemented more naturally by creating weak spots where you repeatedly attack instead. This can make it easier to cut the tail for a cutting weapon, or weaken a leg for easier trips. Or, for us hunting horn and hammer users, allow for more damage on a wide array of targets like the head, the skull, or even the face if you're feeling particularly crazy one day. You could then use focus mode to target one of these areas to parry or do big damage with flashy new moves. If I'm at all good at guessing things, this could be where we get something along the lines of that counter melody ability I brought up in my hunting horn redesign video. To me, a universal set of counter moves for all weapons is an easy next step from Ryzen Sunbreak's trend of giving out counters left and right. And if it works more like a special stance, it could end up having some things in common with GU's Valor Sheet too. It's always cool to see the developers repurpose older mechanics to something entirely fresh and new. The Sacred being an evolution of Palamutes is the perfect example of this. Faster traveling and mobile item use are a given while on the back of our new mounts, but in Wild we'll take it a step further. You can whistle for a quick panic escape after being hit, which reminds me of Rise's Wirefall. And while it may be a bit too early to say based off of its one quick hit, you may be able to use your weapons while riding too. The gunner in this video, for example, took a couple quick pot shots on the move. Lance players might finally be able to do the true mounted jousting charges like they always dreamed of. And for us hunting horn users, we might be able to play songs on the go and skip the pre-hunt buffing you usually do at the camp to start the fight at full potential. The possibilities there are pretty much endless, but let's go back a second to that gunner, because just moments before he started shooting, he was using a greatsword. We got access to our equipment from the camp in 5th gen, but now for the first time ever we'll be able to carry 2 weapons to swap between on the fly. I've seen nothing but hype over this reveal, but as a hunting horn user, it's admittedly making me kinda nervous. In every game up until now, each weapon choice comes with a bundle of both unique benefits and corresponding drawbacks to balance them out. Greatsword hits like a truck, but it's slow. Insect Glaive requires you to keep up your extracts to take advantage of Kinsect boots, so on and so on. Hunting Horn, as we all know, has its ability to buff hunters with melodies, and it pays for it by dealing lower damage compared to most other weapons. And there lies the potential problem. Unless there's sort of check and balances between the weapon swapping, I could easily see hunts for a lot of players starting like this. Whip out a Hunting Horn, get some buffing songs active, and then swap to the quote-unquote real weapon they actually plan on using for actual hunting. This could essentially just let every hunter sacrifice their second weapon slot to get extra skills and stat boost, without paying for it in damage potential like Hunting Horn does for using its own gimmick, turning Hunting Horn into both the most and least used weapon in the game. Hopefully this really doesn't end up being the case, because I'd hate to see my favorite weapon just evolve into a buffing item. There's gotta be some sort of balance there to avoid devaluing an entire weapon class. The way I do it, song buffs should probably fade out or at least be significantly weaker if the player that activates them switches to another weapon, or maybe there could be a new song ability that only Hunting Horn users can take advantage of. Alternatively though, if everyone has access to Hunting Horn buffs, there's no real reason that Hunting Horn itself should be weaker to compensate for them, should it? So maybe this is finally the game where we'll see it to be just as strong as everything else. Now, me personally, whichever way it works, I'll probably just be running 2 horns for twice the amount of song buffs, as a lot of you probably could have guessed. The best case scenario for overall balance though is that there will be some sort of caveat for this system, because while I'm speaking on the perspective of a duder, there are other weapons that could suffer a bit from being exploited too. I could just as easily see a light bowgun, for example, just being used to spam status ammo, or a greatsword just for wake up hits. I'm sure that won't be all bad, and weapon swapping could just as easily be an awesome new ability for us to use, but it'd still be the first reveal in a long time that's got me looking at it a little bit sideways. Fingers crossed that I'm worried for nothing though. That said, we're in the active news cycle with this. It's great that the time has finally got here after months of radio silence. The time since that first reveal all the way back in December felt like it lasted for ages. And with another reveal right on the heels of this one in less than a week, it looks like we'll be hitting the ground running, and I couldn't be more excited. Definitely looking forward to see what we get next, and sharing my thoughts on it with all of you. Till then though, this has been another KPlays, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day.